Good morning. My name's Kevin Earnest, and I am not the pastor here. Nick is in the media operations office, where you'd often find me. He's learning how to turn the live stream while I learn how this works. So seriously though, I'm thinking we should rename the sermon series from Unlikely Heroes to Unlikely Preachers. I've given a lot of technical talks across the Midwest, and from topics ranging from activate sludge inhibition to anaerobic digestion, and thankfully, maybe thankfully, that's not the topic today, but it puts me a bit outside of my comfort zone because it's not the topic today. My prayer over the past 2 weeks has been threefold. First, that you and I both learn something from the scripture today. Second, that you would offer me grace as I stumble through these words. And third, that my meditation and my words are pleasing to God. But as I was preparing, I kept coming back to this word unlikely. Unlikely. That's me. But today's unlikely heroes, they're unlikely in a different sort of way. Shiphrah and Puah, if you've never heard those names before, you're not alone. And that's why I chose them for this message for us to highlight. They get maybe 2 paragraphs in the whole Bible. They're not Moses. They're not other famous women in the Bible. They're just 2 midwives doing their jobs. And yet, without them, there's no Exodus. Without them, there is no Moses. Without them, the story of God's deliverance doesn't happen. So, let's take you back to ancient Egypt. Imagine the throne room, the most powerful empire on earth. Pharaoh sits on the throne, absolute authority, commander of armies, builder of pyramids, and he summons 2 midwives, 2 women with no political power, no army, no status. 3,500 years later, we have their names recorded, but Pharaoh, we don't even know which Pharaoh it is. There's some historical debate on which Pharaoh it might be. But God records the faithful, and we forget the proud. This is a story how 2 real women made a real choice that changed history. And so we're trained in, when we're giving, I do consulting engineering to present, to try to get work in the door, that we should tell you what we're going to tell you, and then we're going to tell you what we told you, and maybe we can convince you. So my thesis is, faithful courage can be bold or shrewd, but it always begins with fearing God more than anyone else. Okay? So verse 16, Pharaoh commands the midwives, when you're helping the Hebrew women give birth and you see the baby being born, if it's a boy, kill him, but if it's a girl, you can let her live. This is state-ordered genocide, murder of babies. And these 2 women, likely enslaved, are told to become the executioners. We hopefully will never face command this extreme, but we all face pressure to compromise. A boss asking you to bend the truth, a culture urging silence about injustice, expectations that push you to sacrifice integrity. What do you do when human authority demands what God forbids? Now, we have examples that we can lean on throughout the Bible. We have Daniel and Lion's Den. We have Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. We have the entire gospel story where we're pushing against those moments of injustice. But what did Shiphrah and Puah have? They didn't have Moses yet. They didn't have the 10 Commandments. They didn't have prophets. They didn't have Psalms. They didn't have examples of faithful resistance. What we're pretty sure that they had is that they believed that life was sacred, the stories of Genesis. They have the ancient promises to Abraham that God would bless and multiply their people. They had the stories of how God had been faithful to their ancestors through Joseph, and the basic understanding that God is faithful. And that was enough. We often wait. When I know more, when I'm more mature, when I've read a few more books, when I've attended a seminar, when I go to seminary, when I see someone else do it and they don't get fired, we're really good at waiting. And we've turned it into an art form. They had almost nothing, they acted. So what are we waiting for? In verse 17, the 2 wives respected God, so they didn't obey the Egyptian king's order. Respected God. So let's talk about that phrase in Hebrew, because that's going to be the key to the entire story. And don't worry, you don't need to know Hebrew to follow along, but it's going to help us understand why different Bible translations use a different word here. The Common English Bible that we read from today says respected God, and I think that's the right word to use here. You might be looking at the ESV or NIV or even the New King James would say feared God. Others would say revered God. And they're all using the same Hebrew phrase, the Hebrew text, and I'm going to butcher this. So, Yareu et ha'elohim. And if you speak Hebrew, I apologize. Feel free to correct me later. So the key word in that phrase is Yare. That one word is so rich that it needs several different definitions to capture the meaning in English. To fear, to respect, to revere, to stand in awe of, to take seriously as ultimate authority. The translators of the Common English Bible that we read from in this service chose respected because they wanted you to understand right away. This isn't cowering terror. This is deep respect, reverence, and awe. So when the Bible talks about fear of the Lord, it's often using the same word. Proverbs say the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's not panic, it's reverence, it's awe. It's taking God so seriously that his opinion matters more than anyone else's. That's what these women had. Yirat Elohim, the fear of God, the respect of God, the reverence for God as ultimate authority. So you might hear me say feared God, respected God. I might not have caught all of them in the sermon, but that's what I'm trying to say. They all had the same underlying meaning. They had to choose. Whose voice were they going to listen to? Pharaoh can kill me, but God made my soul. Pharaoh rules Egypt, but God rules the universe. Pharaoh's reign will end, but God's reign is forever. Who do I fear? Who do I respect? Whose authority? And they didn't manufacture this courage on their own. God was already in work in them, preparing them, enabling them to respond. This surely wasn't their first time in front of the Pharaoh. This is what God does. He goes before us and gives us what we need when we need it. They refused to kill the babies. They stayed in their positions. And when Pharaoh demanded an explanation, they gave a shrewd answer. Unlike Egyptian women, Hebrew women are strong. This is deception. But Scripture presents it as faithful in its extreme context. Why? If they had openly refused, Pharaoh would have executed them and replaced them with compliant midwives. The genocide would have continued. Moses would have died. The Exodus would not have happened. This is describing what they did in this specific situation. It's not prescribing what we should do in other situations. Scripture's default is truth-telling. But in rare extreme cases, protecting innocent life from murderous evil, shrewd resistance appears in the Scripture. Like when Rahab, another woman of the Bible, hid Israelite spies and lied to protect them. And she as well is honored. The key is discernment. Scripture, wisdom of believers, careful reasoning, the Spirit's leading, discernment. Not is lying always okay, but what does love and justice require in this extreme situation? So no, you can't use this sermon as justification for lying on your taxes. But I was protecting my wallet from the government, I was protecting. It doesn't work that way. Faithfulness sometimes looks like bold witness. Sometimes it looks like shrewd resistance. But it always begins with respecting God, with Yirat Elohim, with taking God seriously as ultimate authority. So, what does this mean for us? First, ordinary faithfulness can change history. Shiphrah and Puah were not leaders, they were midwives. Their workplace became a sacred place for obedience. They didn't know they were preserving Moses' generation. They just knew life was sacred. Your daily work matters. Maybe you're a teacher who could ignore the bullied kid because honestly you've got 30 other students to take care of and paperwork due on Friday. Maybe you're an accountant who's thinking if I just move one decimal point, no one will notice the difference and my boss will love me. Most of us aren't delivering babies. We're delivering quarterly reports, we're delivering pizza, or maybe you're like me and you watch 4 girls' basketball games on Saturday, and you got 2 more this afternoon to watch as my daughters continue to play. So is anyone else doing that this weekend? But that's where God expects us to be faithful. These feel small in comparison. But you may never know how your faithfulness fits into God's larger story. Your small choices shape who you become. Daily faithfulness forms courage long before crisis arrives. Takeaway number 2, God sees hidden righteousness. No one saw their daily obedience except God, and God honored them. Verse 20 says, so God treated the midwives well, and the people kept on multiplying and became very strong. And then continues, and because the midwives respected God, there's the phrase, respected God, God gave them households of their own. The text repeats the phrase twice. Their reverence for God, their respect for God, they're taking him seriously as ultimate authority. That's what motivated everything, and God saw and honored it. So much of Christian faithfulness is unseen. Not losing your temper when your coworker takes credit for your idea again. Choosing not to gossip even though you have the best tea. Praying for that person who annoys you instead of just complaining about them. Showing up to church even when you'd rather stay in your pajamas. Nobody's giving you a trophy for these things. There's no Instagram post of day 47 of not gossiping, #blessed. God sees, and that is enough. Point 3, you don't need all the answers to act in faith. They had a fraction of what we have, yet they acted. What are you waiting for that they didn't have? Maybe God isn't asking you to have all the answers. Maybe God isn't asking you to be ready to preach. Maybe he's just asking you to act on what you already know. Where has God been speaking to you? What step of obedience have you been putting off? You have more than they had. Act on what you know. So here's the question that the story puts in front of each of us. Who do you fear? Who do you respect? Who has ultimate authority? Whose approval shapes your decisions? Whose disapproval keeps you up at night? Is it your boss? Your neighbors? Who somehow have the perfect lawn when yours looks like a disaster? Like mine? Your friends who always seem to have it together? Is it the algorithm? The comment section? The fear that someone will screenshot something you said 5 years ago? Or is it God? The Hebrew asks, do you have Yirat Elohim? Do you take God seriously as ultimate authority? Do you respect him above all others? If you failed before, God's forgiveness is available. You can start fresh today. Now I'm going to ask you to do something that might feel uncomfortable as the action as you go out this week is to find a person this week and actually talk to them about something real. I know it's easier to text, it's easier to send memes and laugh, but you need to have an opportunity to share and actually have a real conversation of where you fear people more than God. Pray together to help to grow Yirat Elohim in reverence and respect to God, and check in with each other. Or if that feels too big, let's take a smaller step. Let's start by writing down one step of courage God is inviting you to take. And as you go this week, remember, courage grows in us through community and spiritual practices. Prayer, scripture, gathering for worship, taking communion. These things are all important for us to grow and to find people who will support you in the journey to do it together. Shiphrah and Puah said yes to God. Will you?